Yep.
We're live.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay, I'll call to order the Thursday, September 10th meeting of the Jersey Shore Area Board of School Directors. Mr. Enders, could you take a roll call, please?
Mr. Becker. Mr. Berngard. Ms. Dobler.
Here.
Mrs. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Kinley.
Here.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Allen.
Here.
7 members present, 2 absent.
Okay. We could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Enders, could you mute everybody else, and then I'll unmute myself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, in the agenda, there's no formal president's report listed, but I just wanted to take the time to address a few topics before getting into the formal agenda for this evening. These are my personal thoughts and observations as board president, and may not necessarily represent the board as a whole. I hope most of them do. First of all, I want to recognize September 11th. A reminder that tomorrow is the anniversary of September 11th, 2001, after which the phrase "never forget" was commonly used to remind everyone never to forget the victims, including the police, first responders, and our military, as well as the everyday heroes aboard Flight 93 who made the ultimate sacrifice to save others. 9/11, please fast forward to recent months and recognize the efforts of those individuals who have stepped up to the front lines in our collective response to COVID-19. Not surprisingly, this includes law enforcement, first responders, and our military, but also extends to many other occupations, including but not limited to volunteer and charitable organizations, food banks, farmers, truckers, cashiers, care workers, and Jersey Shore Area School District employees, many of whom have willingly gone beyond the scope of their normal responsibilities to support the well-being of others. So to all those 19. Next is regarding the meeting, and this is primarily for those that are tuning in online. Please understand that the discussions, debate, and other decisions during tonight's meeting are intended to develop a fair resolution that addresses the best interests of students, parents, and the community at large. No decision will be a perfect answer that everyone will support 100%. In this regard, please understand that spectator limits established by the governor are 250 for outside events and 25 for inside events, and includes all individuals within the venue, not just what we normally would think of as spectators. As a worst case scenario, consider basketball or wrestling in winter sports with an attendance limit of 25, which would often be less than the typical number of team members, coaches, and referees. For football, the current limit of 250 would reduce our available seats probably to around 20 to 30 for parents and other spectators, and those are just estimates. But that's kind of what we're having to deal with. Third issue is legislation. I think it's safe to say that the board, not to mention participants and their families, appreciate that both houses of the legislature on a bipartisan basis have overwhelmingly passed a bill this week that allows individual school districts the latitude to determine the number of spectators who can attend. However, even though the legislation was passed by what appears to be a veto-proof majority, the legislation is still subject to the final approval or veto of the governor, who stated that he intends to veto. In the case of a veto, the legislature would again have to vote to formally override the governor's veto by a 2/3 majority. The bottom line is that whatever is the outcome tonight, it does not mean that that is the final decision regarding spectators and PIAA sponsored events. Until the final legislation is passed, any law, it is my understanding that we are still constrained by the recommendations of the governor, the Department of Education, and the Department of Health, as generally described previously. Just open this up to the superintendent or solicitor if they have any clarifications or corrections. Please feel free to speak your piece.
No, Mr. Allen, you're correct in that even though that legislation has passed both houses, which did make us excited, until we get a resolution from the governor or it's revoted on again after a veto, we are bound by the 25 indoor and 250 outdoor regulations. So the conversation tonight is largely going to focus around making sure that we do what we're comfortable with inside those parameters. But as I discussed with the solicitor earlier today, I would like to have some direction this evening before we leave on what you would like us to do internally if we do have the ability to do that, to avoid having to have another special meeting once that, if and when that does become law. But in the meantime, we do need to have a decision and update our plan to account for the 250 outdoor change that allows potentially for some spectators to be present. I do want to say publicly that I am proud of the community's efforts to make arrangements to allow for some spectators to be where they can see the game, whether that be the neighbors on the hill or whether that be the businesses in town. We have to control what's happening on our facility and follow the 250 regulation, but I was proud to see the community's response to at least some sort of accommodation to allow people to see our kids tomorrow.
And I don't have anything additional to add. I think Mr. Allen and Dr. Ulmer covered it, the current status of the law and the current pending legislation, obviously, that we're waiting so diligently to see what happens in the governor's office. So unless something changes, I think we're faced with the framework that has been laid out relative to participation of spectators at our sporting events and within the district.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for everyone to join me in a moment of silence to honor Mr. Tom Todd. Tom was a Jersey Shore School District retiree, a local business owner, and a fan of Jersey Shore athletics who passed away this week. So we could have a moment of silence, please. Okay, so at this point, we'll move on to public comment. Just as a reminder, public comments for tonight's meeting are limited to those related only to the agenda item for tonight's meeting, which is attendance of the PIAA and PHAC sponsored events. As always, up to 3 minutes per speaker will apply, and total duration of public comments will be no more than 30 minutes unless extended or closed by motion of or vote of the board members. As with the board's traditional practice, comments from the public should be limited to offering suggestions and supporting information, and the board will generally decline to answer questions or participate in any debate with the public participants. This is consistent with recommendations of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association.
And I will publicly make it known that the number is 570-398-5576. Again, 570-398-5576.
Did we have any emails or correspondence from anybody requesting that we contact them, Dr. Ulmer?
No, we did not.
Thank you.
Pam, if you could turn down volume on
I
your...
did.
Okay, thank you.
We have a
You
caller.
are live.
Okay. I know, thank you, board. I know it's a hard decision for you guys, but I wanted you to consider about the kids and what they participate every year in fall sports, and to make it where they can be there, be it band, cheerleading, whatever for the game, even if that means parents cannot be there. It's about the kids and them participating and keeping a normal routine as best as we can. So I'm just asking that you consider, the kids first and foremost, and not always the adults. That I feel for them because I was one of them last year, but that the kids should come first and be able to be on that field and participate and have a time that they can have, hopefully a good one, be it, like I said, I'm for the marching band, of course, but just consider that, and I thank you very much.
Caller, can you hear me? Guess not. Patrick, did you get the caller's name and address?
Pam Garrett, Watson Township.
Thank you.
School district, courtesy of the floor. Can you please state your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Robert Harrow, and I'm calling from Rocktown.
Robert Harrell from Rocktown. Thank you, and you
Yeah, I'm just wanted to make a comment that I agree that the kids do need to come first with this. However, the parents of the kids that supported them for the last how many years at this sport aren't even going to get to see them. The senior parents, you're not even going to allow enough parents in there for the senior parents to see their kids, and that's appalling.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Jersey Shore Area School District, courtesy of the floor.
Hi.
Can you,
Hi, I'm Emily Dabb calling for the school board meeting.
Emily Dabb, can you tell me where you're calling from, please, Emily?
Pine Creek Township.
Pine Creek Township. Thank you. You're live.
Hi, I'm calling about the attendance for the football games, and I really feel strongly about the students being able to be there the entire game. Looking at the band and the cheerleaders, I think they've been working very, very hard, especially since July with music and a show. And I think that they work just as hard and deserve to be there to cheer on the football team, play the music to get them pepped up during touchdowns, and agree that there's going to be areas outside of the football stadium, albeit not what we want. This whole situation isn't what we want, but our kids should be number one. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
JSASD, courtesy of the floor. Please state your name and place of residence.
Yes, I'm Bert, B-U-R-T, first name, Francis, F-R-A-N-C-I-S, last name, Jersey Shore, 1425 Locust Street.
Okay, you are live.
Just curious, I'm looking at the agenda printed out by the school board, and it's been stated that you'll only take questions relative to item C, miscellaneous, which is relative to the safety, et cetera, et cetera. But then also, then we go to item D, executive session. What is, I'm asking a question, will there be an executive session, and what's going to be discussed in that executive session?
Mr. Francis, for now, that's just a placeholder in case we find that there's a need for it. But there's no planned executive session.
No plan, no executive session, so we can forget. I don't have to hang on. Then in your advertising for the special meeting, you state in the meeting it'll be at 7 o'clock, et cetera, but it says it's for extracurricular health and safety plan or anything else that comes before the board. So if there's anything else that comes before the board, then will you take any other questions?
The only item on the agenda is the extracurricular health and safety plan, which is essentially is discussion about how we're going to distribute the capacity of our athletic venues.
Okay, enough of that. I would close in saying, you all know I've been coming to school board meetings for the bigger part of my adult life. And I've never, ever seen a school board faced with the issues that this school board is faced with. So I want to compliment you for the good job you're doing, and I know I appreciate it, and a lot of the other people in the district that I talk to also realize that the difficult task you have. So the good Lord be with you people, and we'll be looking and saying prayers for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Thank you. Can we recommend we close courtesy?
Sure. Can I have a motion to close courtesy, please?
Moved.
Second?
They're all mic'd, I think. I'll
We have a
second it.
Patrice?
Yes. Yes,
Thank
it's me.
you.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments or concerns? If not, Mr. Enders, could you take a roll call to close courtesy, please?
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
7-0.
Okay, thank you, everyone. At this point, we'll go into discussion of the updated extracurricular plan and address in particular the circumstances that we're in now and the research that Dr. Ulmer has and recommendations for distributing the seating.
Oh. You're muted.
I will share before you discuss that what I'm hearing regionally is that most schools will not be charging the spectators that are permitted in because the capacity of 250 will be so small for events that you won't see anyone else charging for events most likely, and I would like to continue that pattern. We also, because of the regulations, are being discouraged from collecting money, so that will kind of coincide with why you're seeing that happening. There is, I know it was in the paper over the weekend about Keystone Central, but you're going to see a pretty standard, I think, across the region approach that visiting spectators will not be coming to events. So we're really, even though you'll see on the options that I gave you what would happen if we allowed visiting spectators, I will tell you up front that you're probably going to see other school districts follow a pattern of not having visiting spectators at events where we're restricted by that capacity. And by and large, the spectators that are going to be given tickets, you're going to see across the region that start with senior parents. It's not really, as you see in the plan, numbers-wise an issue with most sports that are outdoor. It becomes an issue when we move indoors, and it becomes an issue for football. And what we're going to see and what you see in the plan is, as you heard in public comment, the preference towards those senior parents who this is going to be their last shot at seeing their kid participate.
So as a clarification, on the appendix where it says no emission, you're talking about costs there?
Correct.
Okay. Craig, how are we going to, we going to just do a blanket motion to do this and then we'll have separate little motions as we go through this? How do you want this to take place?
Well, there really isn't any magic formula. I think one step at a time would probably be the best. And then maybe at the end, we can kind of summarize all of those items that we've approved to put out in a statement on the website. Dr. Ulmer, for the availability of seats at football in particular, because that's the most pressing right now, what did we end up with for the capacity?
If once Serena Henry went through and determined the size of the number of the team, coaches, event workers that are required on the field, and visiting teams, you're seeing I'm I'm pulling this up because it was something that Serena did for me. Once you account for the members of the team, the coaches, the trainer, the game manager, all the event staff, you're down to, once you include the visiting team, the band, and the cheerleaders, we're at about 15 people left of the 250 capacity. So that's where in the plan you see under football, under varsity football, if band and cheerleading are present, your option would be to start with senior parents. There are 18 senior parents, seniors on the football team. So essentially, if we can trim that down, we can probably give each of those seniors a ticket for each home game to allow one of their parents to attend.
So that excludes any visiting fans. Right.
That would, yes, that excludes visiting fans. If you decide to allow visiting fans, then we'd have to split that 15.
And assuming those, say, one ticket for each student, then we probably would have to have them socially distanced while in the stadium, because they wouldn't be within a family unit any longer unless they were, siblings or something like that.
Correct.
Well, they'd have good seats.
So I have a question for you, Dr. Allmer. I just want something clarified. Are you thinking of what was just said are these students just football students that are going to be receiving tickets, or would it also be the seniors of band and the seniors of cheerleading? It's all three?
So if you look at in the plan, we actually there are 31 seniors in all three, football, cheerleading, and band. So when we get down to that 15, we would have to alternate those ticket handouts across home games. It could flex a little bit depending on the size of the visiting team. So there could be a game where if the visiting team is smaller, we have more tickets to hand out, and every one of those seniors could have a parent present. But we right now, in Serena's numbers, are accounting for an average size team, and that's where we get the 15 from. There could be a game where there's a large visiting team and we don't have any left, unfortunately, with the 250.
And what was it?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Has there been any talk among the PIAA, not PIAA, the PHAC, as to limiting what players they bring to away games, or not? You don't know that.
It's what I understand is they're trying to let that up to the coaches.
Okay.
Because it's going to be really hard for us to say, well, limit your team size to this number, not knowing based on who's playing and what positions each person can play. Is that fair to everybody? If you have a team that can play, you have a kid that can play two positions, but the other team doesn't, then are we unfairly disadvantaging someone by putting a cap on it?
I wasn't really thinking of a cap. I just didn't know they talked overall about it, but that's fine.
So we have 15 senior football players, you said?
We have 18 senior football players, 9 seniors in cheerleading, and 4 seniors in band.
For 15 seats. Roughly.
Do we normally have 8 security people there at the football games?
I think that's the normal number, yes.
I think we would need that many if we're not allowing a lot of spectators in, or is that something by contract we have to do? Yes? No?
I think that's a great question.
I'm not sure he has an answer.
My concern would be we're probably going to need to have somebody support the people that are letting people in the gate. So we may not need 8, but we're going to need something.
And you don't know how many is going to show up at the parking lot.
Okay.
So not that those people would go out there, but I mean, you might need to have them, you know, more there, right there at the gate. Craig, you talked about piecemealing this. So do we want to make a motion to accept the plan as written up to the appendix? You know, there's just a little bit of red on that, but that's pretty straightforward that we can accept the plan with the red, not including the appendix. You want to start there? So we at least start and move forward from there, go through the sports then? You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the plan. What's the name of the plan? Let me get back. I have it up on my computer. That's
extracurricular health and safety plan.
To accept that up to the appendix. We'll discuss the appendix separately. I move for that to be a motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion on accepting the plan up to the appendix?
Well, let me change that. Let me add Appendix A, because Appendix A is all just the government stuff from the CDC. There's no changes on that from before.
Through Appendix A then,
Yeah.
as motion as modified. Mr. Kinley, are you okay with a modified motion?
Yes.
Any other questions or concerns about the motion? Okay, hearing none, could you take a roll call, please, Mr. Enders?
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes, with the exclusion of Appendix B.
That wasn't included in the motion.
Just wanted to be clear. Yes is fine.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler, Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
7-0.
On Appendix B, the general guidelines, the 25 and the 250, those are not recommendations. Those are what it has to be, right? Okay.
Right.
In 1 minute they call it a recommendation, and the next minute it's no, this is an absolute, but you don't call it that. So as we're going down Appendix B, that's just all straight information in the general guidelines. There's not a problem with cross country, right? We'd have to have the whole school there just about. Golf we don't have. Not a problem with softball or soccer.
And we're not doing any cross country other than dual meets. Is that correct, Dr. Ulmer?
My understanding is that most of the invitationals have been canceled because that brings together multiple schools in a single event. So most of those have been canceled, and it's pretty much just the standard meets that are occurring for cross country.
Okay, thank you.
So all of the winter sports, or not winter, fall sports, there is no problem other than football.
Other than if we get into October and we get ready to start basketball, for girls.
That becomes a winter sport then.
Yep. Our biggest issue is football.
All right, there is, am I missing wrestling or isn't it on here?
It's not on here at this point.
And I think we're hearing wrestling isn't going to start until after January 1st. I believe.
Be a winter sport.
That's a PHAC thing, Craig? Or what?
I think that was PIAA was making that recommendation.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's just go down through the list. So cross country is okay as is.
Right.
Golf as is. Softball as is.
Well, let me ask a question on that. Being that it's not held on our school district property, are we under those guidelines because it's an outdoor event, or we're not tied to that then? Or you're shaking your head, yes?
No, we are not tied to that. And actually,
the facility where the event's at.
Is that still the case? Because we lease that facility though? Even if it's just $1 a year, would we still have responsibility because we're technically the owner during that period of time?
well, at 250 people outdoors, based on the size of the two teams, you'd have to have a lot of parents and grandparents there to get to 250.
Yeah, there's probably not enough room in the stands there. Okay, as is. Soccer.
I don't think we have a problem there either.
And all these also would still be no visiting fans.
But we don't say that on our things. Do we need to do that? Or say that in general?
We probably need to add it as a condition, at least from the board level.
Was that discussed with the athletic director, Dr. Ulmer?
It was, I didn't discuss it with regional athletic directors. That conversation occurred today with superintendents. I believe the biggest issue was football, and that, if we go back to the softball example, even if the visiting spectators came, we wouldn't run into capacity issues.
So do we want to add another bullet under each of these sports, whether or not we were accepting visitors, just to clarify the policy? Before we go too much further.
Or you can just put it in the general guidelines. Under the you can put another statement under general guidelines, Craig, if it's going to be if we're going to do it the whole way through.
I agree.
Well, then what would we put in? We would, under the general guidelines, if we're only making that something for football.
Oh, I thought we were making it all the way through. Sorry, I misunderstood. I know we said that we wouldn't run into problems. I didn't know. Where are the other schools going? Just football?
Basketball would be the same thing.
Well, basketball, no one's coming no matter what, because you're going to have more than 25 just on the teams.
Yeah.
Hopefully by then we're not under this, Wayne.
And we're already one over.
Dr. Ulmer, did the superintendents discuss all the sports or just football?
We didn't discuss spectators specifically to all sports. My understanding was the concern was really just football.
Okay.
Because of the capacity.
Well, if we're not going to worry about it, there's no sense putting it in here other than when we get to the football bullets then.
Right. I was misunderstanding what we're
I just wanted to make sure there weren't any other ones that were in here that we would have to worry about that. Okay, so soccer. Anyone have any objections to what's in soccer? Okay, soccer's okay. Tennis.
I'd like to see 250 at a tennis match. That would be interesting.
That would be lovely. And some people, could be starved of sports and attend those.
They design. I think they
You
had a
watch,
game tonight.
As long as none of our tennis players hit one of the judges with a ball. Or okay, basketball, we're stuck with 25. So that probably is also no visitors or none of our own even. Middle school and 9th grade football.
But based on the count for middle school and 9th grade football of participants and game workers and coaches, you're anywhere from 130 to 170 spectators that could be present. So we feel pretty comfortable that we could evenly distribute tickets to those participants' parents and be able to get quite a few tickets for each kid's family to be present.
Okay, so that's okay, not to worry about attendance on that one. Marching band. Any issues there?
Well, we have 3 options. I'm not sure why we have an option, the option 1 and the option 3, because if they're staying for the entire game and the other band isn't coming, what does it matter to us whether they play before the game or at halftime?
Well, those options are if that's the only time what I heard from some other schools is the band would be present either before and play and leave or play during halftime, and that would be the only time they were there. And some schools are using that option to increase their spectator capacity. So in other words, they wouldn't sit in the stands in between playing. They would come in and play and then leave.
So the idea is at halftime, the football team is not on the field so that the band kind of replaces them and it doesn't affect the spectator number.
That's what I'm saying. If we have option 1, option 3 is immaterial because they should be able to choose when they play. Maybe he'll do both. Who knows? Just to give him some more practice.
I think we should only consider option 1. I don't think.
Do they normally come to JV football games? Or is that just they put that in there this year because of losing so many other things?
They normally do not. This is that particular that was just in there as they could go to there as well, but it could be changed to say just varsity games.
No, I'm fine that they go. I just wondered if they normally did, and because even with them there, it's not. You still have quite a few that you can have at 9th grade and JVs, right? Yeah.
I feel very strongly that we need to select option 1. Those kids have practiced long and hard, just like the football players, and they're all part of the team, including the cheerleaders. We have to think about the kids.
Making a motion, Patrice.
I make a motion, option 1.
Okay, motion from Patrice N for option 1.
I'll second.
Second, any other discussion on option 1?
Yes, just to clarify, where does that leave us with spectators for option one?
You would have approximately 15 spectator tickets, depending on the size of the visiting team. That could go up or down.
That's for varsity, but JV would be different.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a JV breakdown?
Yep. JV, and that didn't include band and cheerleading present, but JV has about 130 spectator tickets available.
So JV, if the cheerleaders and the band are present, you're going to probably bring it down to about 100.
Yeah, and right now there are 30 students on the team, so that would mean they'd each get about 4 tickets.
But on that JV, you have 0 for band, so the band does not play for JV?
They do not typically come to that. Cheerleaders do, but the band usually does not.
So according to the schedule, there's only 4 home games that the band will be able to play. It's the same with the cheerleaders. So their competitions are not on the schedule. So there's only 4 things that they can compete, that they can participate in. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
thought.
if they come to JV games, that's going to double that.
Dr. Almer, was it confirmed yet by Mr. McCormick if the football games are going to be live streamed, or are they just going to be taped and then be able to be viewed?
I'm looking at him across the room. What I will say is, you notice in the plan that we did not pursue that internally. I forgot about this, but I should have mentioned it. That the football games will be live streamed by Bear 99.9. Typically, they did a play-by-play, but they're going to live stream the video to coincide with their play-by-play off of their website. So we didn't do that I'm sorry, I should have said that right away. We didn't pursue that internally as a district, because they're going to live stream the video to go with their play-by-play. So that will already be done.
But that's only for football, correct?
That is only for football.
Okay, so back, any other discussion on option 1, the marching band at varsity and JV football games? And the band director is saying that he would like the entire band to play at JV games?
It would be an option. I haven't discussed it with them, but it would be an option. It would give them other opportunities to play.
Yeah, that would be additional performances if they're getting short, so they're not practicing on the field. But only for 4 games instead of the usual. Okay. Mr. Enders, let's take a roll call on M&T. I don't think we had any other discussion.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
7-0.
Hey, cheerleaders. If we're going to be consistent with what the marching band is doing, I don't know as we have 3 option anymore.
I'm okay to move that we go with option 1.
Thank you,
I'll
Ms.
second
Thomas.
that. I'm sorry.
Patrice?
I jumped the gun. Yes.
That's okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
We have a motion and second to go with option 1. And again, that's consistent with option 1 of the marching band selection. Any discussion on option 1?
I have a question. With regard to option 2, Dr. Almer, what would that look like count-wise if we divided them?
For you're speaking with about cheerleaders, right?
Yes.
There are 18 total plus a couple of adults. So if we split them in half and said one, would they rotated JV and varsity, you'd get another 9, 10 off of that count.
9, 10 spectator tickets that are available?
Yeah, you could add 9 or 10 spectator tickets if you split the cheerleaders in half.
And that's to allow for all of them then to cheer at various home, since we have 4 home games, that would mean that they could still be there. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on cheerleading option 1? Okay, hearing no other questions, Ms. Renders, roll call, please.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
7-0.
Then under football, we really don't need any of the, we don't need the who's attendance part because we already made that decision. In the other 2 motions, we can just motion to cross that whole thing off. Or am I missing something?
I just want to make sure that I'm clear that we did vote. I believe that we would not have visiting spectators. So I think you're correct, Mrs. Thomas.
Now, is that in there? Do we need to state that under football? Or is it there already?
It was there as an option, so I will have to clean this plan up and push that out as the final selected option.
Looks like if you go down through the bullets, no concessions, spectators won't enter field, wear face coverings, team social distance, visiting team, we could just add no band, cheerleaders, or fans.
Yeah, spectators or fans, either way.
Live streaming stays the same. Band cheer would stay the same. Admission, we just go with the no option, right?
We're not going to kick them out of the reserve section for 15 people, I can tell you.
And then no admission charge, period.
Right.
So then it's just, so that's pretty minor changes to what we have there.
Yes.
And then who's in attendance? Band and cheer, yes.
Well, we don't need any of that because we voted part of that in the upper part of it. So we don't need any of that at all.
Just get rid of that last bullet then. And all
Because
the sub.
between the athletic director and the coaches, they can decide how they're doing the tickets. We're not going to make that. We're not going to dictate that. At least I hope not.
I would hope not.
The only other thing we do, I said at the beginning, I would like to talk about, we added the language at the beginning of the plan that we would comply with all future guidance to cover ourselves would like to get some direction so we don't end up in a situation where we have to have another special meeting, we can add to the plan after conversation today, and maybe another motion is how we want to handle capping spectators in the future when you have the authority to do that.
Okay. You need a motion for football, so we take care of that first and then go to that into that discussion. Because we voted on all the other ones. Are we going to vote on this or not?
Yeah, I agree with Mary. I think you should vote on that, and then don't forget to vote on adopting Appendix B in its entirety as amended by the motion.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion for varsity football under the bullet visiting team, no band, cheerleader, or spectators. And the bullet who is in attendance will totally be removed. I make that motion.
Okay, we have a second on Mary's motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on any of those items under football? Here, no discussions. Could we take a roll call on football as amended?
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
7-0.
All right, what you're talking about, Dr. Ulmer, it should be part of this, right? So we need to add it. We need to add it to this. Do we know the capacity of the football stadium? Not including all the people that stand around. You haven't been there. Half of them are around the end zones.
Yep, we do. The capacity of the football stadium is 2,834.
So the other part of this one is for the expanded capacity, assuming the legislation goes through. Would we want to still limit to no fans from visiting teams?
Well, I guess before you can decide that, we need to look at the number. Now, he's saying capacity is 2,000. I just took off the 250 already. The capacity is 2,800. I just use that as an average.
Right.
But are we going to be allowed to have 2,800 in there? There's not going to be any social distancing with 2,800. So is there a thing where we have to say we will allow 50%? We will allow 30%? Do we have to make that determination for him to make the next before we can?
I think that's what we're down to now. Is we do it by percentage, or we do it by total capacity, and just say that we're gonna say 2,800 would be, 25% would be what, 700? And I think that you could be easily social distance at 700.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that can go higher. If we're going to be allowed to determine that school district, I think we can go to probably 40% and still be okay. But I might be wrong on that.
Well, as it goes through now,
is that what the legislature is saying? I thought the legislature was leaving it up to the school districts.
They're leaving it up to the school districts as it is currently.
Yeah.
We do have the benefit of not being first. If you saw the paper today, Loyal Sock had to have this conversation last night, and they went with approximately a 30% outdoor and 15% indoor. Doesn't mean you have to use those numbers, but just gives you a sense of where at least one district is already.
Mm-hmm. And to be specific, I think the number for the football stadium, it was 750 was the exact number they used, based on their capacity.
And then are we using this as purely fans?
Yes. So this,
because they would be discounting then all the players and officials and all that.
what I've seen the other districts doing is your participants are your participants. So what you're strictly deciding now would be your spectators, what your stadiums look like or your gyms, and who's allowed into that, the number of spectators allowed in. So for Loyalstock, for the football stadium, as an example, it was 750 spectators.
So 40% would give us about 1,100 that we could distribute because of not having any fans from other teams. Those can be distributed across both sides of the field.
Well, I would like to just maybe throw out a recommendation on something to consider, since we have no idea if the legislation is going to be passed, when it's going to be passed, and what that might actually look like. We don't have to jump the gun and make any decision tonight whatsoever in the amount of percentage or people we feel comfortable, making the capacity number a certain number. I think if you start to go that direction, then we're going to possibly limit ourselves from the very get-go. So I would like to see us obviously keep it in the forefront of our minds that yes, we have to make a decision, but it doesn't have to be done tonight. If we have to call another meeting, maybe so be it. But we don't even know if we're going to even need to make that actual decision. So why make one without being 100% informed on what it is we actually have to make? We realize that we're going to most likely have to come to some kind of number possibly, but we don't know that for sure. So it's just a thought.
We don't have to make that before Monday. I mean, we can discuss that at our regular meeting on Monday.
Exactly.
And next week the game's away. Is the next week it's home? I haven't looked at it. I just know the first two games.
I think what Dr. Ulmer was asking for though was let's put a number on it now. We can always change that number, but at least parents and coaches can have something to plan around moving forward without us having to go back after the fact and make another plan or percentage.
Can you tell me, what does the actual legislation that passed says? It's going to let it up to school districts to determine if they want to do it even at 100%, or what does it say?
I believe the language is local boards will have complete authority.
Oh.
That is accurate.
And I think I think that's one thing that we're going to want to not make and jump the gun on, because you're going to have a lot of people that are going to feel that this would be an unsafe thing if we say 100%. You're going to have people who are going to think we're ridiculous if we say 10%. So instead of throwing a number out tonight, not knowing, and just making some random percentage, I would think that we would just maybe sit and think on it a little bit, and maybe go along the lines of saying, yes, no matter what we do, we could come to some kind of agreement where we would say absolutely no visitors, even if we do, or even if we are given the go-ahead to have 100% there. That way we can have as many as we would like from our own community to attend on whatever number we come up with. Maybe the board doesn't feel that way and wants to go a different direction when it comes to visitors, but I think that's just a hard decision to make tonight in the next 10 or 15 minutes when we don't really know if we're even going to need permission. Once we throw a number out to the community, I would just throw caution to that until we know 100% on what it is that we are, if we're even given the go-ahead to have that authority to do so.
Well, at this point, we don't have a motion, so technically we don't really have any need to discuss it. So we have a motion of doing something or not doing anything.
I tend to agree with Michelle because I think that,
Mr. Kinley, do you want to make a motion?
no, I do not.
I will make a motion to, at this point, to do Appendix B in its entirety with the modifications, because Chris said we need to do that.
Right. We're talking about this adding the percentage or quantity of spectators for football is the motion that I'm speaking about now. I think we already had a motion on Appendix B as amended. We had a motion and voted it on it.
No, that was just in the football. We said as amended. We didn't do the whole appendix. We did it individually, and Mr. Kenyon told us we needed to do the whole thing. The motion that was amended was just the football part of it.
Okay. All right. You're right. You're correct. So at this point, we need to determine whether or not we're going to go with any percentage pending legislation. Have a motion on a percentage or a absolute number, or we could have a motion to table.
What have other school districts done, Mr. Kenyon? Have they have set specific?
The only local school district that has faced this issue currently is Loyalsock, and they did choose to set a limit or a number relative to contingent on obviously House Bill 2787 being enacted.
We're the only two that have home games this week. Wow.
You're the only ones that have called meetings to date to
take care of it.
Right.
And
I make a motion we table it because I think we're going to get a lot of, no matter which way we go, at this point, we're going to get a lot of pros or cons. And I think it's too early to set a number.
Okay, we have a second to Mr. Kinley's motion. Mrs. Stemler, was that what you were recommending?
Yes, I was just unmuting myself to speak. Sorry. It took me a minute to find the button. I will second Mr. Kinley's motion.
Okay, any other discussion, pro or con, for the motion that's on the table?
And the motion on the table is?
Is to table.
Table what?
The additional spectators for football.
Okay, I just want to make sure I knew what I was voting on.
Is that correct, Mr. Kinley? Just to...
That is correct.
Any other discussion on tabling that item? Okay, Mr. Enders, roll call, please.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
7-0.
So now I believe what we're looking for is a motion to accept Appendix B in its entirety as amended. Is that correct?
Yep, so moved.
Second.
Well, let me ask you a question, Chris. Should we be saying Appendix B, or should we just be saying the whole thing as amended? You know, we did 3 parts. We did parts here.
Yeah, and I'm just the way we've done it so far. I think what I think is probably cleanest for Dr. Ulmer would be a motion to approve the plan as amended by all of the prior votes.
Okay, so I'm going to adjust the motion to do that, Craig.
Okay.
I'm making a motion to accept the plan as amended. So all the votes would be included in that, right?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Thomas has made a motion to accept the plan as amended in its entirety.
Second.
Is
Nancy.
that Mrs. Petrowski?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion or more concerns about getting back on the ball field? Okay, Mr. Enders, can we take a roll call, please?
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
7-0.
I am going to request we get a clean copy and our update tomorrow.
You got it.
I have a dumb question. Will the restrooms be open at the football field?
They'd have to be.
They would be, yes.
All right. And then where will the football players go during halftime if the locker rooms are closed?
Well, the locker rooms aren't closed. The capacity of the locker rooms is limited. So we do have to, that has been conversation with Serena and I. We do have to use multiple locker rooms and spread kids out so that we don't go over our locker room capacity.
Okay. I thought I saw somewhere in here that it said the locker rooms would be closed and they had to dress at home, come dressed from home and go leave the game after and go home and shower. I thought I read that somewhere in this information that you gave us.
Oh, that would be for, that was in, I see it. It was in, I think it pertained to spectators. Or I'm sorry, Nancy, no, I'm wrong. It was in one of the levels of leading up to opening sports. So way back when in level 1 or 2, when we were only allowed to do certain things, that's when we were required to limit locker room and bathroom use. We're not anymore.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
I've gotten questions on that, so thank you. That's good to know.
I have a question. So who is going to be in charge of figuring out how many tickets there are to disperse?
It would be your athletic director.
Okay.
Okay, does anybody else have any further discussion on the athletic plan? Okay. Any need for executive session, Dr. Ulmer? Okay.
No.
And do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Just put everybody, Ben.
Yeah.
You really don't have to vote on an adjournment.
No, you don't.
Okay.
Okay, we're adjourned.
My gang that goes to the football game that sits around us, we're tailgating on my deck tomorrow. They're all bringing something, and we're gonna have 99.9 on, and we'll pretend we're outside in there.